Good morning and welcome to part 3 of our Wi-Fi music player setup. So in the last video we assembled the hardware, we downloaded the Max2Play operating system from their website, we wrote it to the SD card, and we booted up the Raspberry Pi with the Max2Play operating system. We then went ahead and got our Raspberry Pi connected to our network. So now we're ready to go ahead and start to set up the Max2Play software to control our music player. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to access the Max2Play software on our Raspberry Pi by typing in Max2Play on our browser. And we'll come up to this front page of their control software and their installation software. And the first thing that we see here is a menu to be able to customize Max2Play for different audio cards. And what this does is it adds a plugin specifically to that audio card. So we are using the Justboom DAC audio card, so we're going to go ahead and select that, and it will automatically install that plugin for the Justboom. Now we come up to the front page of the configuration software. And up here on this menu bar, we have a series of plugins. Here's the Justboom that we just entered. And all of these plugins control different configuration options for our Max2Play software. The first plugin menu that we're going to have a look at is our Wi-Fi Lan Setup. And we set this up in our last video. And so what we want to do is just check that our network name is correct. If you remember, we set this up with the WPS in the last video. So everything looks good here. It's got the correct network name, and we can move on now to set up other parts of our player. The menu that we're going to be using most is the Settings Reboot menu. And here we can control all the basic settings for our Max2Play software. We can choose a player name, a unique player name for our system. Right now we're just going to leave it at Max2Play. In this menu we can activate our premium license for our premium plugins, and here we control our region. Every time that we change something, we're going to reboot the Max2Play software, and that's done here on this menu. And here we have a list of all of the plugins available for configuring different hardware and software options for our Max2Play. And you can see that the ones that we have active are the ones listed up here on our plugin menu. If we click on this bar, we can see a list of the Max2Play extensions that are available for their software. Now, some of these are labeled premium, and they require a premium license in order to download. Now, these plugins are very useful. They control different types of hardware that are compatible with the Max2Play system, and they also contain different setup and control menus. So what we can do is select things that are particular to our system, the system that we want to build, and we can go ahead and download those and add them to our plugin menu bar. Alright, let's go back to the Settings Reboot menu, and I'm going to go ahead and type in my activation code to activate the premium software so that we can continue with our configuration. Now our premium license is activated, and you can tell that because of the green activated bar. In order for Max2Play to use all of the memory on our SD card, we have to expand the file system. And we do that by pressing this button here. Alright, that pretty much takes care of everything in our settings reboot menu. Now we can go and start setting up the hardware settings on our Raspberry Pi. So in here, the first thing that we're going to do is choose the sound card. So if we go into this pull down menu, we're going to go ahead and choose our Justboom DAC. And it's going to require a kernel update that we'll do later on. We'll go ahead and save these settings. And it says that we need to reboot the software. So we'll go ahead and do that in our settings reboot menu and just click on the reboot button. Okay, you can see that the reboot was successful. And let's go back to our Raspberry Pi settings. And you can see that the Justboom DAC card has been loaded into it. So the next thing we're going to want to take care of is some items in this overclocking and GPU memory section. We want to click on this max USB current, and this will increase the current to the USB ports, which we'll need if we add some memory sticks to the USB. The next thing we want to do is disable the Bluetooth on the Raspberry Pi. Now it says that this is necessary with the Hi-Fi Berry digicard, but it's important to check this with the Justboom as well. If you don't check this, then there's problems communicating between the Justboom card and the Raspberry Pi. The next thing that we're going to check is this disable audio on the Raspberry Pi. And again, it says that it's necessary for the Hi-Fi Berry, but it's also necessary on the Justboom cards. Go ahead and save this. And again, we need to reboot the system. So we go into Settings Reboot and click the Reboot button. Alright, the reboot is successful. Let's go back to the Raspberry Pi settings. So we've completed these first two sections. We're not going to change the audio output on the Raspberry Pi. We're not going to change anything in the HDMI settings because we're not going to be using the HDMI cable for this. And the last thing we're going to do is upgrade to the latest kernel. And this requires a reboot, so let's go ahead and reboot the system. And the reboot is successful. So just a quick peek here to make sure that everything's taken care of. And then we'll go over to the Justboom menu. Go ahead and set the master volume up to 100. Now Max2Play has a series of setup files that you can use to configure your Justboom DAC hat for different types of players. You can either do it as a simple audio player. You can set up a multi-room system. Or you can set up an AirPlay device. We're not going to use those. We've been setting everything up manually, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. There are 3 different media players available on the Max2Play system. The first is Squeezelight, which controls the Squeezebox server. There is SharePort, which is an AirPlay player, and there's a DLNA client player. Now we're going to set up our system as a Squeezebox server, so we're going to use Squeezelight, and we're not going to be using the SharePort. We're not going to be using AirPlay on our system. So what we want to do is disable the SharePort from starting when we boot up the system. So we're going to go ahead and unclick the auto start. And since we're going to be using Squeezelight, we just want to make sure that the auto start is clicked. We'll go ahead and stop the SharePort since we're not going to be using it. A quick final look around, and then we'll get ready to set up the Squeezebox server on our Raspberry Pi. Now in this menu, we will set up the Squeezebox server. Now we are going to use our Raspberry Pi as our main server for our music player. So the Raspberry Pi will control where all of the music is sourced from. So the music can be sourced from several different places. It can be local files, either on the SD card or on a memory stick. It can be music stored on a separate system on the network, like say on your desktop. Or it can be music that can be pulled from a cloud server. Or it could be a music streaming service such as Pandora or Spotify. And in fact, in our system, we're going to be using Spotify as our main music source. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to download the Squeezebox software off of the internet. So there are a couple of versions of the Squeezebox server available. We can go ahead and activate this pull-down menu. And the version we're going to be using is the Nightly 7.9. So click here and we'll start the installation. And we'll fast forward so you don't have to watch it, the whole thing. And the installation is complete. Now before we open up the Squeezebox server web administration, there's one thing that I want to show you here on this menu. Now, if you want to use ShareTunes, there is a special plugin available that will allow you to use ShareTunes on your Squeezebox server. So you can play, or you can use AirPlay on your Squeezebox server, and if you want to do that, you can just install it from this menu here. Now let's go ahead and open up the Squeezebox server web administration. Oops, let's try it again. There we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign in to my Squeezebox account. Now, if you don't have an account set up, you can go ahead and set one up here. Now in this next menu, you can set up your local music folders onto your Raspberry Pi. So here you would enter in and set up where you have your music files, either on an SD card or on a memory stick. And then we would do the same with the playlist folders. So we would let the computer know where the playlist folders are. Okay, so that's basically the setup, the start of the setup. So here's the front menu, or the home menu of the Squeezebox server. In this section here is the My Music section, is all of your music that you have stored on the local server. So in our case, this will be all the music that we have set up on the Raspberry Pi, which we have none. We can also set up remote music libraries, and I have the music on my desktop computer plugged in here. All right, back to the main menu. In this section, we can set up our favorite internet radio stations. So let's look at what's available here in the local Atlanta area. Let's choose FM. And in just a second here, they'll come up. Okay, so these are all the local Atlanta radio stations that have internet feeds. So we can go ahead and set these up and listen to them. Now the thing that I'm going to be using most of the time is Spotify to listen to my music on the system. So we can set up different types of apps. You can, on here I've got Pandora set up and Spotify set up. Now the Spotify app, as it comes from the Squeezebox server, will not work properly with the Max2Play software. So we're going to have to go and configure the Spotify player so that it will work properly. So we're going to choose the settings menu from the bottom right hand corner, and then we're going to go into the plugins section. Okay, and we're going to look for the Spotify plugin, and this is the official Spotify plugin, and like I said, this will not work. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to deactivate this plugin. So we'll go ahead and uncheck it and hit apply. And we have to restart the Logitech server. So we'll go ahead and come out of here and go back to the Max2Play menu. And you can see here there is a box to check to restart the server. We'll go ahead and do that. And it's restarted. So we'll go back to the web administration, go back down to settings and plugins, and we'll make sure that the Spotify is gone from the active plugins, and you can see it here down on the inactive plugins. So what we're going to do is we're going to now go down to the third-party plugins, and we're going to install the proper Spotify plugin for the system. Now Max2Play put out a video that shows how to install this third-party Spotify plugin. That one is outdated. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down and look at the Spotify protocol handler. And this is the one that you're going to want to use to make sure that Spotify works with our system. And this only provides the ability to play Spotify. We're going to have to reload the official Spotify player after we have this handler loaded. So we'll go ahead and check the protocol handler, hit apply, and we're going to wait for it to download from the internet. We're waiting, we're waiting. Okay. So it's ready, so we have to restart the media server. So we'll go back to the Max2Play menu. Hit to restart Squeezebox server. And then we'll go back to the Logitech media server. Go back to settings, go back to plugins, and we'll make sure that Spotify protocol handler is in the active settings. There it is. And we'll go ahead and reload the Spotify plugin. We'll check it, hit apply, and then restart the server. And we'll go back and check that everything is loaded properly. And you can see here we both have the Spotify plugin and the Spotify protocol handler. So we're all done. Well, we're almost done. There's one thing that I forgot to do here. We have to set up our account information on the Spotify protocol handler. So we'll go ahead and open that up, agree to their terms of service, hit apply, and right here we're going to go ahead and enter our account information for Spotify. And we're good to go. Okay, that pretty much takes care of everything in the setups. So the last thing I'm going to do here is I want to change the player name. So Max2Play is the default. We're going to name it Nizzy's Main Squeeze, since I'm using the Squeezebox player. And go ahead and save our settings. And we'll need to reboot it one last time. Okay, we're good to go. The Max2Play software is all set up, and our music system is ready to go. So in the next section, what we're going to do is we are going to hook this up to a pair of powered speakers and see what it sounds like. Thanks for watching.